JK Rowling has cancer.
Maybe now that she's blatantly supporting and parroting Yahtzee rhetoric, maybe y'all will stop supporting it.
Another day, another strange internet meltdown over JK Rowling. We're going to break this down and so much more on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where we take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, our media, and our politics, all from an independent perspective. Guys, up first, we got to check in with the internet's favorite villain, at least in the more woke pockets of the internet, that is, JK Rowling, who is, of course, the author of Harry Potter, who spoke out against transgender activism, I guess you could call it originally, and now is one of the most famous faces of the gender critical movement, and apparently a Nazi, according to TikTok. Not according to reality, but according to TikTok, because she cited a quotation. Yep, we're going to get into this whole scandal and drama. First, here is an extremely popular TikTok video making the accusation against JK Rowling.
So JK Rowling quoted Mein Kampf in her memorial tweet about Charlie Kirk. If you still like or consume Harry Potter content, you really, really, really need to reconsider that. Like, I'm not kidding. Maybe now that she's blatantly supporting and parroting Yahtzee rhetoric, maybe y'all will stop supporting it when you didn't when she was being very blatantly anti-trans and anti-LGBTQIA+. Like, I don't know where the line is where you guys will stop consuming and supporting people who are literal scum of the earth. Maybe this will be it. If you still choose to engage, support, and consume Harry Potter content, unfollow me and remove me from your life. If you can overlook blatant Yahtzee sentiment, you're not safe to be around. You're not.
Oh no, I guess I'm gonna have to remove myself from the life of this non-binary TikTok creator. Oh my gosh, there's just so much here. But this TikTok, essentially, among many, many, many other things, accuses JK Rowling of expressing support for Nazism or for the Nazi regime. But what's so crazy is that the tweet that inspired this all literally does the opposite. So JK was tweeting about, oh, by the way, guys, this TikTok we just watched, more than 100,000 likes. So people are eating up this insane narrative. But anyway, the original tweet that JK wrote that got these people all worked up was about the opposite of fascist authoritarianism. So here's what she wrote. If you believe free speech is for you but not your political opponents, you're illiberal. If no contrary evidence could change your beliefs, you're a fundamentalist. If you believe this state should punish those with contrary views, you're a totalitarian. And if you believe political opponents should be punished with violence or death, you're a terrorist. That tweet has 15 million views. Honestly, I completely agree with everything she said, and I just find it so bizarre that any of this is at all remotely controversial. Anyway, though, somebody asked in a follow-up, do you include Hitler in that? To which she replied, many who scream fascist at opponents fully endorse his methods. She then wrote a quote from Mein Kampf, which Hitler wrote, and that quote reads, the very first essential for success is a perpetually constant and regular employment of violence. So that's it. That's the evidence that all these TikTok activists have for branding JK Rowling a literal Nazi supporter and sympathizer and accusing her of quoting Hitler, or because they have to do this TikTok speak to get around the algorithm. They always say mustache man instead of Hitler. It's so cringe inducing. But anyway, it's like, the reason this story fascinates me is just multiple levels of this, because for one, it's just the alarmism and the way people act like, oh my God, she's the worst thing in the world. I don't agree with her on everything, but she is not that extreme or crazy. She's certainly not all the things they say she is. She's not a Nazi. She's not anti-LGBTQIA+. She's fully supportive of gays, lesbians, bisexuals. She is very against most things associated with the trans community at this point. I think it would be fair to say, and I don't necessarily blame her after how she's been treated by them, but also like the entire premise of this campaign against her is that, oh, you can't support anything Harry Potter. No, that's just dumb. Like, it just separate it from her. She has unlimited money. She can already give as much as she wants to whatever groups. It's not going to make any difference. So if people want to enjoy Harry Potter, just let them. And then there's just this epidemic of illiteracy because people heard that quote and think that that means she's pro-Hitler. When anyone who can read something and understand the context of it, the intention of it, and why it is being cited, proves that we'll understand that she's citing it as bad. She's saying Hitler believed in using violence and employing violence. And she's speaking out against political violence. So she's saying, no, the fascists and the authoritarians, the Nazis, are the ones who want to kill people for their speech. She's citing it as an example of what she does not believe in, not citing it because she's coming out of the closet as an open Nazi. But that's literally how they're portraying it on TikTok and on these other platforms in these left-wing echo chambers. It's deranged. But worse than that, it's like a remarkable failure of our education system, because you are supposed to be, as a functioning adult, which these people are not, but we would have hoped that they would be by now, by this stage in their life, you're supposed to be able to analyze something in the context. This is basic literacy and reading comprehension skills, and understand the context and intention in which something is written. There's nothing wrong with reading Mein Kampf. There's nothing wrong with quoting Mein Kampf. I'd argue it's important, actually, to understand the works and writings of the most evil people in history. It is crazy to suggest that any sort of citation is an endorsement. Like, that's just not how conversation or thinking works. They're trying to problematize the act of thinking or engaging with bad people's ideas. That's insane. And then it's just all, of course, totally terrible smear campaign from the loving and kind and tolerant crowd. Now, the more messed up trend here, this is already bad enough. Someone, and it's not true, it's not real, someone spread the news on TikTok that JK Rowling had cancer, and it sparked a whole wave of celebration. Here, I'm not kidding. Here's a TikTok video.
JK Rowling has cancer. I regret to inform you all that was in fact fake news. The woke liberal media has yet again pulled the wool over my eyes. It is a sad day though.
The comments were full of people in the original video before the correction that announced it was fake news. The comments were full of people celebrating and happy. One wrote, "This isn't funny. What if she survives?" Another person wrote, 10 out of 10, hope bait. A trans user wrote, "You got my hopes up." Broken heart emoji. Me getting hope baited at 7:30 on a Monday morning. She doesn't, another person said, she doesn't, but if we manifest hard enough, anything is possible. Y'all are sick. Y'all are demonic. I mean, if you find yourself wishing cancer on people because they have different opinions than you, you're the problem. Like, I don't know how to explain to you that you're the bad guy. You're the illiberal, authoritarian monster. You're not progressive. You're not tolerant. You're not open-minded. You are incredibly close-minded. You are just horrific, disgusting, busted, crusted. I don't know, man. I just find everything about this so absurd and so ridiculous. And this fringe online left, though it's not that fringe, unfortunately online it's quite widespread, they just demonize and they just condemn everyone, and they're always looking for reasons to wish you the worst. And frankly, I don't want to share a country with those people. I truly do not. And I don't really see how we can long-term coexist with people who are so anti-civilization as we know it. But other than that, I'm sure they're lovely. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button while you're at it. Remember, you can send in voicemails for my Voicemail Friday episodes of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. The link to send in one of those is in the description. And you can send in your woke horror story, your personal life scenario, or your questions that you have for me, and I may respond on an upcoming episode. Up next, we're going to watch some clips from a truly wild segment on Piers Morgan Uncensored, discussing political violence and the rhetoric about it all. Of course, after the tragic and horrifying assassination of Charlie Kirk, this segment featured two main characters here who I want to talk about and focus on. One is the left-wing progressive Anna Kasparian, who is a co-host of The Young Turks, and she is very much to my left on most political issues, but I consider us friendly. I like her a lot. We've had good dialogues in the past. The other is the streamer Destiny, who is in some ways a more moderate Democrat, but in his rhetoric, quite radical. I've also had conversations with him in the past. I find his support for these kinds of things pretty horrifying, but anyway, Anna Kasparian snapped on Piers at Destiny after he defended really the indefensible. So we're going to take a look at a couple clips from that. First, here's the moment where Piers just asked Destiny to condemn the killing of Charlie Kirk, and he just was not willing to do so. Take a look.
If it turns out to have been somebody with a leftist ideology who wanted to shut up Charlie Kirk, would you condemn that?
I won't condemn anything until the president of the United States can go on air and say, all of us need to calm down.
So you won't condemn the murder of Charlie Kirk until Donald Trump says something.
I'm a YouTuber. Leftists and Democrats have been condemning and turning down the temperature, condemning violence, turning down the temperature for a decade. Donald Trump can't go on TV and say, all of us need to calm down.
Right.
Can you tell me why he cannot?
Why would you expect anybody, Destiny?
You can't answer that. Can you answer that question? Why can't Trump
you
go
answer
on TV
this
and say,
question?
all of us should be less violent?
Why do you
can't
think
Trump say that?
Why do you think
your behavior contingent on Donald Trump?
Insane right now.
Why do you think?
Your
No, let me
behavior
ask a
contingent
question.
on Donald Trump?
Let me ask a question.
Because he's the president of the United States of America and the leader of the opposing political party.
Destiny. Let me
You have a huge audience of young men who listen to everything you have to say. So when it doesn't matter. You have a huge audience, and because of the fact that you have a huge audience, you have a responsibility to not turn. No, it hasn't. It hasn't been broken. I actually care about the country and want to bring people together. You do the opposite. You represent the worst of us, Destiny. You're embarrassing.
You should tell Donald.
All right, let me ask Destiny.
Well, that was interesting. I find it bizarre that he accuses Anna of having her brain broken by the internet, when it is clear to me that Destiny, who I do think is a smart guy, I think is a hyper competent debater, I think his brain has been broken by the internet, or by politics, really. I think he's got the strongest case of Trump derangement syndrome I've ever seen in any living specimen. And I say that as somebody who has never supported Trump and is very critical of him, because all of this is just bizarre moral relativism. It shouldn't matter what other people say or what positions they take. You should be willing to condemn terrorism. And what happened to Charlie Kirk? He was killed because of his ideas and beliefs, to send a political message. That is terrorism, textbook. And your own moral standards, what you stand for as a person and as a political commentator, it shouldn't be hard to say you're against terrorism. And there is no amount of the other side being hypocritical that justifies supporting evil in your own right. So even if Destiny's claims about what Trump has or hasn't said were correct, it really shouldn't matter. I would never, for example, if a Democrat was president, because, my bias on the table, I'm a little more Republican leaning, although I'm an independent. If a Democrat was publicly supporting rape, for example, sexually violating people, I'm not going to be like, well, I can't condemn that until they do. What? What kind of bizarre moral logic is that? It isn't. It's just political, I don't know, tribalization, hyperpolarization, but there's no moral calculus there at all. And at the end of the day, you're responsible for yourself. You can't control what other people say and do, but you can control the moral standards you set yourself to. And condemning terrorism, condemning murder should be like the bare minimum. But Destiny's failing to do that. And I find that really remarkable. And frankly, I don't care. I'm not deeply invested in partisan politics. I care about ideas and beliefs and free speech and open discourse. But I'm not worried about, how can I help Democrats win or how can I help Republicans win? That's not what I care about. But if I was somebody who was really concerned about that as a Democrat, I would be so horrified by Destiny going on these panels as a Democratic person and talking like this, because I think it is like political cancer. I think it's kryptonite to normal Americans to take this kind of radical approach. I really, truly do. But he does it every time there's some sort of act of violence, and maybe it helps him go viral. The other thing, but Anna's absolutely right that he is a bad representative for the Democrats at this point, particularly around these issues. And I think even most Democrats have condemned this, but the fact that he won't gives people a tool to point to who want to demonize all Democrats as violent and crazy. And so Anna's right that he is a terrible representative when it comes to these kinds of issues. And it's interesting because he's gone kind of crazy on some of these issues. So it's like, well, at some point, stop talking about him, stop taking him seriously. But I can't do that because he still gets an insane amount of views and attention online. He still has massive audiences, far, far, far bigger than I do, that tune into him on YouTube and on his streams and on his clips from his streams across all these channels on YouTube. He's a massive influence, whether you like it or not. So we have to reckon with what he's saying. And frankly, what he's saying and pushing these days, including mocking Charlie Kirk's widow, is pretty dark, but it's a piece of our modern politics, and we've got to look it in the face. So let's watch a second clip, and then I won't subject you to any more of this, because this was a tough watch, this Piers Morgan episode. I love Piers, really appreciate the debates he does. Sometimes they can be hard to listen to, though, and this one definitely was. So here's a second clip I want to play, and then we'll move along.
Speak, please.
My behavior is not reliant on how anyone else behaves. Every morning I wake up and I make decisions about how I choose to react or respond to things. I don't wake up in the morning, check what Donald Trump has to say, and then base my own personal behavior on his behavior. I agree with you in that it would be very helpful to have the leader of this country want to turn the temperature down. And he hasn't done that. I agree with you on that. But that doesn't change the way I choose to respond to what's going on. The idea of mocking a woman who is now a widow with 2 young children who witnessed her husband get shot in the neck and bleed out to death. How could you mock that? What is wrong with you? I just don't understand it. That's it. I don't understand it. I don't understand you, Destiny. You have so much hatred in your heart.
What?
You're
they watch a lot of old episodes of the
so
JFK.
embarrassing. You make the left look so bad, and you don't even realize it. You are seriously so embarrassing.
So these are the two genders of left-wing online voices right now. One of them is trollish and nihilistic, and one of them, whether you agree with them or not, is still positive and still seeking to find the best in humanity. I personally hope that the Anna Kasparians win the day on this particular discourse and debate, and that people do not go along with or support the toxic troll approach of folks like Destiny. But that's just my take. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, yada, yada, yada. And we got to talk about one final thing on today's show that I'll be fully honest with you guys, full transparency. I've been extraordinarily conflicted about, been going back and forth in my own head for days. And that is, what do we do with these crazy people, our fellow citizens who are out here celebrating Charlie Kirk's death or murder? And then also, what do we do about the gradations below that? So what about the people who say, I don't support his murder, but he was a piece of shit? And so, like, how do we handle this? Because people are getting fired, they're getting targeted. I've been a long-term opponent of cancel culture. I've been a long-term opponent of getting people fired for saying something offensive. But of course, there have always been some limits, and people openly expressing support for terrorism is clearly something that if I ran a business, I would never want to employ a person who did that. So I've been going back and forth in my head for days about this, and we're going to talk about it. First, I just want to roll a clip from News Nation, help you guys get caught up on what's going on, to see a lot of people have been getting fired for their extreme statements, including teachers, firefighters, doctors, nurses. Take a look at this.
We've seen teachers, college-level teachers that have been fired for largely because of things they've put on social media, saying, you know, this is karma or some other awful statements. That's this gut reaction that they've had to the murder of Charlie Kirk. They've decided to put out there, and it's interesting. I think it's notable that these are largely university professors or people in these positions of power. That it comes, they're educators. They're people that are teaching the next generation versus someone just, if you go on Reddit, you'll see people's personal takes on whatever issue, and they can say anything they want. When you're representing yourself, but if you're representing a higher institution or an office, you're an elected official or whatever else, then it becomes this sticky territory. But I think you're right to display the positive, the things that people are saying, like Governor Cox, that is a message that we should all resonate with, versus people, spewing online their initial gut reactions to things that isn't appropriate, really, once I think they take a step back and think about it.
So before I flesh out my position on this a little more, I want to give you one more example that I discovered that I think sums up how I feel about this. So Jason Rance reports about a nurse, and he included the screenshot, who posted, quote, after Charlie's death, "I love when evil white cis men die. It's literally my favorite thing." Now, this is a nurse who works at a hospital, and that hospital put out a statement. Providence St. Peter Hospital is addressing inappropriate comments made on social media by a caregiver, which contradict our core values of dignity, compassion, and respect. While we conduct a thorough review, the caregiver has been placed on administrative leave. Yeah, I think she should be placed on leave, and I think after a fair investigation, she should be fired, assuming this is all true and this is all what really happened. I am mortified by the number of people I'm seeing in positions of public trust, teachers who we trust to teach our kids about our country and about our way of life, who openly are cheering terrorism. It's their First Amendment right, but it has never been the case that you can say literally anything that the First Amendment protects and have no consequences from your employer. To me, it's just not the same thing. Firing someone because they support terrorism explicitly, cheering it, and firing people because they tweeted offensive things years ago, or because they have some edgy joke that they posted, or because they use the wrong pronouns, or because they made a hand gesture, or any of the stuff that was this cancel culture of years ago. It's just categorically different to say that people who literally openly cheer for more terrorism should not be teachers and other positions where you're responsible for other people's kids. Nurses, for example. Now, I'll give you an example. She just says she loves when evil cis white men die, right? Like, how can you be a nurse and entrusted to keep people alive and with people's life and death when you are casually, glibly celebrating and cheering people dying on social media? I don't think you can be. And I don't know, guys. You tell me. Like, does this make me a hypocrite? This has kind of been eating me up because I've been against cancel culture for years. Does this make me a hypocrite? I don't think it does. I do see some meaningful distinctions here in terms of the proportionality. Part of the problem with cancel culture was that it was always so disproportionate. It was like, oh my God, he said the F slur 10 years ago. He can't host the Oscars now. Really? That's just like wildly disproportionate. Whereas you openly support terrorism, so I don't want you teaching my third graders about the world. Doesn't seem disproportionate to me. Seems kind of proportionate, actually. But it's already getting messy. And it's already, frankly, turning into kind of a witch hunt. People on the right are making databases and lists and websites and all this stuff that so quickly can go wrong, and that we saw backfire so terribly to commit such injustices under the kind of cancel culture era. And they're already targeting people who didn't support Charlie's murder, but are just saying things they don't like about Charlie Kirk. So it's already turning into a cluster. I'll give you an example. So one of these mega accounts is trying to get a teacher fired. And this woman is a teacher at a high school, a social studies teacher. And she specifically spoke to her students. She was recorded talking about this, about what happened to Charlie Kirk, and talked about the violence being wrong. We even have the audio. Listen to this.
But the violent aspect, you should be allowed to say whatever you want without violence being inflicted upon you. Does that make sense? And so when we talk about things like industrialization, right, as much as it was less controversial, right, like I said, was an absolute terrible person, the things that he has said. Violence isn't the answer, kids, is what it comes down to, because it violates those founding ideas. Industrialization.
They're trying to get her fired for that 30-second clip that someone took of her in social studies class. I think that's totally unjustified. I think that is cancel culture. She specifically said violence is not the answer. She didn't support terrorism. She didn't support killing someone, but she did say that she thinks Charlie Kirk is a terrible person who said terrible things. Okay, that's an opinion she's entitled to have. It may have been inappropriate for her to give that opinion. Maybe she should keep her political opinions to herself in the classroom. But frankly, if we're being honest, teachers give their opinions all the time. And regardless, that would be like something maybe the school should say, hey, don't do that, or some sort of thing they could address, not a career-ending mistake. Yet they're treating this woman the same way. She's being put on the same lists and targeted in the same way as the people who are cheering terrorism. The sense of proportionality, the focus, the moral clarity, the distinction between, fair discourse and supporting terrorism is already muddled beyond belief, already turning into an absolute mess. Here's another example. Libs of TikTok is targeting a police officer who, again, explicitly condemned the violence. Here's their post. Travis Carroll, a police officer for Emerald Island, North Carolina, allegedly made a post online smearing Charlie Kirk after he was assassinated. Charlie being openly racist. He ain't really winning in the empathy department. Our tax dollars pay his salary. Any comment at Town Emerald Isle? And she posted his photo and then the post. But when you actually read the post, here's what he actually said. He said, I think perhaps you're not seeing the other side of it. Of course, this is a comment thread taken totally out of context. I think perhaps you're not seeing the other side of it. When Nancy Pelosi's husband got attacked and hospitalized in his home, Republicans were laughing, high-fiving, and doing backflips. Hell, it wasn't just 2 months ago they were laughing and high-fiving about feeding immigrants to alligators, who were also fathers, mothers, and brothers. Not to mention Charlie being openly racist. So you can imagine, while the act is horrific, certainly he ain't really winning in the empathy department. So I don't necessarily agree with anything in that post, but this guy was in his personal capacity on his Facebook page, having a conversation with someone and giving his political opinion that violence is wrong, but he really didn't like Charlie Kirk. He thought Charlie was racist. He's entitled to that opinion. And the idea that he should be fired as a law enforcement officer if he's otherwise, a great employee, that is cancel culture. That is actually potentially would even be a First Amendment issue because he's a government employee. He has the First Amendment right to say what he wants about Charlie Kirk and to call him a racist. So we're already turning into witch hunt, cancel culture hour with these multiple examples. They're also just already misidentifying people and spreading fake accusations. So like one of the guys who's leading this is named Ryan Fournier. He posted, important update. All posts regarding Cynthia Rayberg at Westside Elementary School in Elkhorn, Wisconsin have been deleted after we received further information. Cynthia was not the individual who made those comments. Oh, good. So they just targeted and went after some random woman for something she didn't say. This is going well. Like, this is the problem with justice through Twitter mob. It so quickly spirals into chaos and injustice and mob mentality and frankly a witch hunt, and that's already happening. So I really think people need to get a grip. They need to stop attacking random people, stop making databases and lists and all this stuff, and specifically I think focus should be placed on people who are openly supporting violence, not just giving opinions about Charlie Kirk that you don't like. And if you fail to make that clear distinction, then this truly will be remembered as just cancel culture at its worst, done by the same Republicans and right-wingers who decried it for years. That's my take. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you aren't yet. Hit that like button, yada, yada, yada. And with that, guys, that'll be it for today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. We'll talk again real soon.